Hello and welcome to my first indie game devlog of my current project, which is called Road to Your City. Some of you might already know my project since I'm working on the game for a few years now, but some other people don't know the project at all. So in this video I would like to tell you what the game is about. Road to Your City is an isometric 2D city builder where you have to build up a football city. You are the city mayor and you have to create the perfect environment for people to come into your city and make children want to join your local football club. Later in the game you can take part in league competition, and the goal would be bring your team all the way up to the top of the world. I would like to come back to the question why I do this video. The main reason, I was asking a question on my Discord server, and the question was about streaming actually, but that kind of showed me that people might be interested in some insights of the game, and I kind of liked the idea of start vlogging, so I would love to give it a try. In the background you can see some current game footage, which is an alpha state currently. I already sent out some alpha keys to people from the Discord server, and I really got some great feedback from them, and it helped me a lot to improve the game. Just for your information, I'm working on this project only in my free time because I do have a regular job, so the progress might not be as fast as you might know it from other projects, but I try to invest as much time as I can into this project to finish it as soon as possible. Okay, so I would say let's start with a flashback and go back to 2014 where the project has started. Start of the project was in February, where I first thought about creating a game. I found the XNA framework from Microsoft, which allowed me to write the source code in C#, which I'm familiar with because I'm using it in my daily job. And later I switched the framework and went over to Indiegames, which is the open source sequel of XNA. A lot of great games have been made with Indiegames. For example, one of my favorite games I've ever played, Stardew Valley. Get back to the game. In 2014 I started with the heart of the game, the time map implementation. There are two isometric standards for time maps, and you can choose between a diamond map and a staggered map. Both do work, of course, but I decided for the diamond map since it's much easier working with the tile index than it would have been with a staggered map. One of the first things I worked on was the component system. The framework itself offers you functionalities like, is the left mouse button pressed, or is a specific key pressed currently, etc. But real behavior has to be implemented manually, so I started adding most common controls like a button, a checkbox, or a radio button, for example. Since every time I started the project I instantly saw the time map, I started working on a screen manager, which allowed me to create different scenes. I also added fading properties, so it's quite easy to set up nice transitions from one screen to another. I was working with some really bad sprites for a long time, but in the end of 2014 I started using Inkscape to create vector-based graphics, which I finally rendered to a PNG file. In 2015 I added more and more buildings to the game. It had been more than 35 buildings and a bunch of assets. Next I added cars into the game, and I also implemented an A-star pathfinding algorithm, which finds the shortest way from a point A to a point B. In the background you can see how the algorithm works. You see a start point and an end point, and you get the shortest path between these 2 points. If you have obstacles in between, the algorithm finds the shortest path around. Besides the most common components, I also added more components like a text box, a tab control, or tooltips. I also started creating the audio manager for playing sound effects like rain, snow, or construction sounds for the buildings. I only started the sound effects. The music manager has been added at a later stage of development. I didn't do anything in the second half of the year since I moved into a new place, and there was a lot of work to be done, so I had a break of a few months. In 2016, more and more buildings came up on my list, and I also realized I had to draw all the buildings from 4 different angles. And of course I want the player to be able to rotate each building. So I've made the decision to recreate all the buildings from scratch by modeling them in Blender. I've created a simple setup for all the buildings with the 4 different camera angles and the light settings for the right shadows in the final render. I had to add even more new components. The most common controls had already been created and added to the engine, but I needed more controls like a scroll box or a notification panel to show up notifications to the player about in-game events like upgrading an apartment or if you got a new player for your team. First serious performance issues came up with a great amount of frame drops when I was trying to place or delete a lot of objects at the same time. So I had to spend a lot of time working on the engine, and unfortunately there wasn't much time left to work on the game itself. I also added the particle support to the game, so I could now add rain, snow, or even smoke for buildings which have a chimney. That makes the environment a little bit more realistic instantly. 2017 was the year with the biggest changes and impacts. The first one happened right at the beginning in January, where I ported the game from XNA to monogame. Luckily that worked out quite nicely. I expected it to be much harder, to be honest, but that step was definitely necessary to get future development updates on the engine. And I made another big decision. I overworked the whole game concept, since working on the game for that kind of long brought a lot of new ideas, and I had to break them down to make the game come closer to release. So I changed the concept and I worked out some pretty cool stuff. For example, you have to request fundings for a football club or for create new housing. And when this has been funded, you have more choices extending your city. I also changed the UI for, I guess, the 3rd time. I didn't like the previous comic design, so I went with a more flat style. And I think it's way much cooler than before. Next, I started adding building pop-ups. When I changed the concept, I also had to change a lot of properties and building settings, and that's why I also overworked all the building pop-ups. The biggest update ever made took place in 2017. It was the sprite system. The reason I had to change that was performance again. I did make a really big mistake when I started the project, because I stored each kind of graphic, no matter if it was a button texture or a building sprite. I put all of them in a separate file, and that caused a lot of work for the graphic card. I now use sprite sheets to make it much easier for the graphic card to load a lot of sprites at the same time and draw them more efficiently. One of the first actions in 2018 was adding Steam support to the game. So in the current build, the Steam connection already works like a charm, and the player is now able to get his first achievements. As you might have noticed, I'm not the best animator, but in March I tried to create some simple animations in Blender. They're not the best, but I think they're quite okay. The tech tree was also added before releasing the first alpha. The tech tree shows what kind of buildings can be built and what kind of stage of the game. The small task and tutorial system has also been implemented to make it easier for a new player to get into the game. In June I started the first closed alpha for some people in the new Discord server I've created. So I got a lot of great and helpful feedback, and I was really able to put the game on the next level. The current state of the game is alpha, but the game gets better and better every day. So I guess the next alpha will start soon, so if you might be interested in testing it, you could join the Discord server. I will put the link into the description. And that's it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, just hit the like button, or if you want to see more videos in the future, you can subscribe to my channel. I would love to meet you at the Discord. There is a very nice small community over there. You can also write me some feedback in the comments if you like. Feedback or any kind of suggestions are always welcome. So thanks a lot for watching the video and have a nice day.